It's mid-July and everything is just going crazy in the garden and in our orchard. We have a Manchurian apricot tree and it is starting to give forth its bounty. Now these apricots are smaller than most apricots. You can see a little bit that they're still kind of green. We had to pick them up. Most of these were actually on the ground. So we picked these up and we put them in a bag so that they'll ripen a little bit faster. But these are ready to go ahead and they're ready to process. Now the apricots, basically you don't have to do much with them other than you can half them, pull the pit out of here. Of course they need to be washed, and we're just going to go ahead and put them on the tray and freeze dry those. And once they're freeze dried, there's all sorts of things you can do with apricots, and they are pretty good. Nice taste to them. So we're going to go ahead and wash these and split them. You won't have to do anything with the skin because they're split. They'll freeze dry as they are just fine. Okay, the second step is once these have been washed, we're going to put them in this other side. And then we're going to use the hose and sprayer to give them a final rinse before we cut them in half. And this is also a good time to check for quality control. I have a couple here that have a painter on there, so that's bad. But as you go through here, you can kind of give a check of your apricots to see what condition they may be in. So my apricots are drying on this side of the sink. And in this bowl right here, I have 5 cups of water with 5 teaspoons of this product called Fruit Fresh. This is made by Ball, and this is basically it's vitamin C, ascorbic acid, that will keep the fruit from oxidizing while it's exposed to the air. Now if you don't have this, you can also use vitamin C, which is the same thing as ascorbic acid. So you can actually use both of these if you need to. They're pretty much the same thing. So what we're going to do, if you take a look at these apricots, the first thing you see is just the little remnants of the stem. We're just going to kind of chase a paring knife around here, and we're just going to pop them open, toss the pit out, and these will go into the water with the Fruit Fresh. So we're just going to chase this around, pop them open. Sometimes if you're lucky enough, you can just take these and split them open without the paring knife, but as you can see, I'm just smashing the apricot. So we're going to go through all these apricots and half them, and then we're going to lay them out on a tray and get them ready for freeze drying. Now I may have mentioned this earlier, that you really don't need to use a paring knife. These apricots are really, really ripe. Normally, I don't know if I can find one that's going to be a little bit on the green side, but normally you can just, you can just pull them apart like that, and these, you can see where it kind of tore. But normally, apricots, you can just split them in two and not have to worry about it, but because these are overly ripe, they're just mushing in my hand. That's why I'm using a paring knife. I guess I should point out one thing. When you're going around here with a paring knife, there's 2 ways you can do it. If you take a look at one of these apricots, you can see there's a slight little line that goes around the apricot. If you follow that line all the way around, then you can take the apricot in two pieces with the pit laying flat. If you go around the apricot any which way, like this, well then the apricot's going to be sitting up like that. I don't think it really matters. Traditionally, I guess you want your pit to lay down. I guess the presentation of the apricot, if you're going to be using this in pastries or in a fruit or some kind of dessert, may look better with them laying down like that than with the pit sticking up. Now if you take a look at some of these apricots, many of them are not much larger than a quarter. One of the things about fruit trees is that a fruit tree will produce X amount of weight of fruit. So if you were to go to a fruit tree and thin that fruit tree to a certain point, you'll get larger fruit because a fruit tree will produce that same amount of fruit. So you can either have a lot of fruit that's going to be really small like these apricots, or you could thin them and get apricots which are going to be a lot larger. Now one of the problems with doing that, especially in our area, is with the wind and the rain and hail and weather conditions, we really don't thin our apricots because we let the weather thin them for us. And if you end up thinning them too much and then you have a storm, then you may not have any apricots. And so we're kind of stuck to this point where it's better to have smaller apricots and having a lot of them, or having very few apricots that may be larger. So that's just the way nature is. My bowl here is full of apricots in the Fruit Fresh. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay these out on the pan. They should probably be half size up. The apricots do have kind of a velvet or furry, fuzzy surface to them, and you do not need to remove the skin for freeze drying. The moisture will exit the apricots just fine when they're in halves. So we're just going to lay those side by side, fill up this cookie sheet, throw them into the freezer, and let the freezer start drying them. If you have a frost-free freezer, allow the water that is going into these will start to turn to frost, and the current of the air within the freezer will actually remove a lot of this moisture. So I expect the freezer to remove at least 5% of the moisture of the apricots before I even begin to freeze dry them. That's one of the benefits of pre-freezing your food, is that the freezer on average will remove 5% of the water from most foods. Okay, got a full tray ready to go into the freezer. I have so much produce coming on that even if I had an extra set of freeze-dry trays, they'd be filled up in a heartbeat. So when another tray becomes available after my next load, I'll just transfer these apricots into the harvest-right trays and go ahead and freeze dry. I ran out of trays to freeze things. I tell you, the produce from the garden and from the orchard is coming on strong. I have 2 freezers filling up with produce, and I feel like I'm treading water. Anyway, the apricots are done. Now these are done separately. I didn't have any extra trays, so we'll go ahead and transfer these in the 3 trays I have left. So I'm doing 3 trays, and I want each tray to come out at the same time, just to help save time on this. So we have one tray that is 115.15. Another tray is 1470. This tray is 1203 equals, divide by 3. Each tray needs to be 1396. $13.94, close enough. 13. $13.96 on the nose. And I just need to double check this tray. This tray should be the same. $13.98. Okay. So if everything goes right, these trays should all finish at the same time. Everything is pre-frozen. And the freeze dryer is all ready to go. Into the freeze dryer they go. The apricots are done, and we're going to weigh them. So we have, and these all weighed the same when we started, 794, 799, and 798. So they all dried at about the same rate. Now, tasting these, they taste more tart than they did when they were fresh, because I think the flavors have been concentrated so much. Kind of tastes like a Cheeto when you first eat it. We're going to go ahead and bag these up and put them into storage. And in the future, we can rehydrate them and either make juice out of them, jam, or use them in desserts.